He sold his lifelong home to a young couple with dreams of starting over. But when the woman turned around and smiled, everything stopped. Because he had seen that face before, in a photo he hadn't looked at in 40 years. Henry Lawson, 72, stood quietly on the front porch of the house he had lived in for most of his adult life. His hands rested on the old wooden railing, now chipped and weathered. It had seen decades of laughter, loss, rainstorms, and long summer nights with someone he once loved deeply. The for sale sign had gone up 2 months ago. Not because he wanted to leave, but because time had caught up to him. The stairs felt steeper, the silence louder. His wife, Margaret, had passed 5 years ago, and the house had become more of a museum than a home. He didn't want to sell it to just anyone. He waited. Then came the visit. A young couple, Ethan and Emily, showed up one Sunday afternoon. She wore a faded denim jacket and a nervous smile. He was kind, curious, full of questions about the garden and the fireplace. Henry watched them walk through the home room by room. They lingered in the kitchen. They touched the walls with reverence. "This place just feels like it remembers things," Emily had said. That was the moment Henry decided. These two weren't just buying a house, they were looking for a place to belong. The papers were signed 2 weeks later. Henry stood by the mailbox as they arrived with a moving truck. Ready to take over the keys, Ethan waved, excited. Emily stepped out next, carrying a box, hair tied up, face glowing with gratitude. She turned to say thank you. And Henry's heart stopped cold. His hand gripped the mailbox tighter because her face was almost identical to someone he lost decades ago. It couldn't be. Could it? The resemblance was too strong. The eyes, the chin, even the dimple when she smiled nervously. Henry felt the past rushing toward him like a wave he wasn't ready to face. He had to ask, but the answer would open a door to a story he thought was long buried. Henry stood frozen, his breath caught somewhere between disbelief and déjà vu. Emily tilted her head. "Are you all right, Mr. Lawson?" He nodded slowly, voice rough. "You just remind me of someone I knew a very long time ago." Emily smiled politely. "I get that sometimes. I look like my mom, apparently." Henry's heart skipped. "Your mother's name? Wouldn't happen to be Sarah, would it?" Emily blinked, then her expression softened into something closer to awe. "Yes, Sarah Whitman. Well, Sarah Taylor now. She lives in Arizona." Henry stepped back, eyes suddenly glossy. "Sarah Whitman," he whispered. "She lived here, this street, next door actually. Summer of '83. She was everything." Emily's face lit up. "Wait, you're the Henry? The one from my mom's stories? The boy who left flowers on her windowsill? The one who carved their names into a tree in the backyard?" Henry chuckled, shaky, stunned. "Guilty." Emily laughed, her eyes watering a bit. "She still talks about you, you know. Said you were the only boy who ever listened when she talked about stars and books. But then, you disappeared." Henry's voice dropped. "I didn't disappear. I was drafted. I wrote her letters. But when I got back, her family had moved. No forwarding address, no explanation. I looked for her for years." Emily nodded slowly, eyes wide. "She thought you left." "She waited for months, cried every day that summer. Then they moved to California. She never knew." For a long moment, the air stood still. Ethan, now stepping out of the truck, approached, confused. "Everything okay?" Emily turned to him, smiling with wonder. "Ethan, this is the man who gave my mom her first love." Ethan raised his eyebrows, impressed. Henry smiled faintly, holding back a storm of emotion. "She kept everything, you know," Emily added. "The pressed flowers, the poems, even that old carved rock she swore had your initials on it." Henry's voice cracked. "I thought I lost her forever." Emily stepped closer. She'd love to hear from you. Do you want to talk to her? Henry's throat tightened. More than anything. But what neither of them realized was that reconnecting after 4 decades would reveal more than memories. There was something Sarah never told Henry. And Emily was about to be the bridge between 2 hearts that never fully let go. Emily handed Henry her phone with shaking fingers. She'll want to hear your voice. She always said, if fate is real, you'd find your way back. Henry hesitated, then took the phone like it was glass. The line rang once, twice, then, hello? That voice, a little older, a little softer, but unmistakably, Sarah. Henry's heart nearly stopped. Sarah, it's me, Henry. Silence, then a soft, stunned gasp. Oh my God. Is it really you? It's really me. The two spoke for nearly an hour while Emily and Ethan quietly unloaded boxes, giving them space. Laughter. Quiet tears. Long pauses. She told him how she thought he had vanished, how she held on to those letters that never came, how she always wondered what had happened. He told her everything. The draft, the return, the empty house next door. And just as the conversation began to slow, Sarah said something that made Henry freeze again. Henry, there's something I never told you. I didn't know how, not even after all these years. Emily, she's not just my daughter. She's our daughter. Henry sat down on the porch bench. The world tilted. What? I found out after we moved. My parents were furious. They kept it quiet. Raised her like she was just mine. I never got to tell you, and after a while, I didn't even know how. Henry looked up toward Emily, who was laughing with Ethan, unaware of the storm quietly unraveling behind her. She doesn't know? He whispered. Number not yet. I was waiting for something. I just didn't expect it to be this. The weight of decades pressed down on Henry's chest. He had sold his house to a stranger, and unknowingly walked into the life of the daughter he never knew he had. The girl with his eyes, his curiosity, his heart. Sarah, does she deserve to know? I think it's time. That evening, Henry asked Emily if they could sit on the porch together. He held an old photo in his hand, one of her mother at 17, holding a pressed flower. Emily looked at it with a warm smile. Mom always said you were her great what if. Henry swallowed. What if turned into something real? Emily, I think I'm your father. She didn't speak, not for a long moment. Then she blinked, wide-eyed. What? Your mother and I, we didn't get to finish our story, but I think part of it lived on. In you. Emily stared at him. Then tears welled in her eyes. Not from confusion, but from something deeper. Recognition. That's why I felt like I knew you. You weren't just the man selling me a house. You're the piece I didn't know was missing. But this wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And Henry was finally getting back a chapter he thought had been lost forever. Emily sat in silence on the porch swing, the sunset painting gold across her cheeks. Her fingers gripped the photo tighter, heart pounding in a way she never expected. Henry sat beside her, still and patient, the way he had been for most of his life. You're my father, she whispered again, and I've lived 28 years never knowing. He nodded gently. And I've lived 28 years missing someone I didn't know I had. Tears slipped down her face, but she didn't shy away from them. Why didn't she tell me? Because it hurt, he said simply. And sometimes when you lose something too deeply, you don't think you'll survive finding it again. Over the next weeks, they met often. Henry never forced the bond. He asked about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. She asked about her mother. not as the woman who raised her, but as the girl who once fell in love on this very street. She learned he planted the rose bush in the backyard that still bloomed in the summer. He learned she loved old vinyl records, just like her mom. He brought her the pressed flower Sarah once kept in a shoebox. She framed it. One afternoon, Henry stood in the foyer of his former house. Her house now. She walked in from work, dropped her keys, and smiled. "You know," she said, "this place always felt warm, even before I knew why." Henry chuckled. "Maybe because it remembered you, long before you walked through the door." Emily and Ethan made a small bedroom upstairs into a guest room. Henry didn't ask for it, but they offered it anyway. And sometimes, on rainy nights, he'd sleep under the same roof where he once fell in love, and now had been given a second chance to love again, in a new way. Later that year, Emily invited Sarah to visit. The reunion between her and Henry wasn't dramatic. It was soft, quiet. Two people sitting at a kitchen table with cups of tea and long gazes. "You didn't just sell us a house, Henry," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "You gave our daughter the story she never knew she was part of." He smiled. "And she gave me a home again." In the hallway of that house, there's now a framed photo of young Sarah and Henry, arms slung around each other beside the carved tree from 1983. Next to it, a newer photo. Emily, smiling brightly between Henry and Sarah, her hands on their shoulders. The plaque beneath reads, "Some homes we build with bricks, others with the pieces of ourselves we never stopped hoping to find." Because Henry didn't just find his past that day, he passed it on. And this time, it stayed.